I do want to talk about this because we talked about so much we didn't even get to this. Head coach options, right? The Browns are looking for a head coach for the first time since 2020. And you guys don't know, I got Mac Robinson on with me right now. So the Browns are looking for a head coach for the first time since 2020. I've had a lot to say about this. First, we'll just touch on why the job is opening, right? And I think I was talking to you before the show, and I brought up this stat, and I think this stat pretty much explains why the job's open, right? Yeah. I thought this number that I was able to bring up does a pretty good job of it. Hold on, it just covered your face. So let me get you back on screen. But I think this does a pretty good job of it, right? If we're looking at 2024 expected points, and if you don't know what expected points is, based on the field position that you have a point total that is expected. Some teams, most teams are above that point total. Some teams are below it, right? But that's what expected points is. Expected points is the expectation of points based on your field position throughout the year. So Browns have a really good defense. They're gonna have a lot of opportunities for points. 2024, the bottom four, and this is gonna be interesting because I think you guys are gonna find a common denominator here. 29 minus 62, the Tennessee Titans. 30, the Las Vegas Raiders at minus 76. 31, the New York Giants at minus 82. 32 is the Cleveland Browns. And what people are thinking, maybe it's like minus 90, minus 85. Minus 161.38. That means that the Browns scored 161 points less than expectation. 161 points. Like, is that even fathomable? Let me see how many points. That is 27 touchdowns. Like, think about that. The Browns in 2024 were 27 touchdowns under expectation. I also would like to point out to some people who might think that a lot of teams are under expectation, and that it's not fair to say that. The Jacksonville Jaguars were plus 13. They were the 26th ranked team in expected points, okay, in 2024. 26 teams were positive in expected points in 2024. Let's move to 2025 and see if things got significantly better. You're going to see a common denominator here, right? Number 30, Tennessee Titans. What did they just do? Minus 113. Then you have hold on, let me get this right in order. Yeah, so you have the New York Jets at minus 104.5. What they should probably fire the coach, but then you have the Tennessee Titans at minus 113.9. Las Vegas Raiders minus 119.29, and the Cleveland Browns at minus 149.86, Mac. 149.86. That's over 300 points of expected point totals. Again, we're talking about 26 touchdowns?
Can I just add one thing here real quick, right? So you said it's 149, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Browns scored 279 points this year.
Yes.
If you just get them back to zero, add that 149, they would have the fifth highest scoring offense in the AFC.
If they were just at expectation.
If they were just at zero.
If they were just at, that's how good the defense can make the offense. If we were just at expectation, we'd be a top 5 offense. That's crazy, right? And like, just to make this point clear, what we're talking about being an expectation is not something that's impossible to achieve. The Carolina Panthers were plus 4.9. They were the 26th ranked team in expected points. We're talking about the Browns are one of, for 2 years in a row, 6 teams in minus expected points. That's why the job is open, right? Like, to those of people who are confused of this, And look, I would give Kevin slack if we were sitting at 26 in expected points, right? If we were sitting 26 in offense and points and all of that shit, I would be like, hey, man, it's not been great, but look at what he's dealing with. I'll be right there with you. Minus 300 fucking points in 2 years? No.
Hell no.
Like what?
And that's the crazier part of all of this, right, man? Is like, again, just with how the season has gone the last 2 years. And it's also why, like, I had seen a tweet from John Owning, who covers the Cowboys, and he was talking about Matt Eberflus, but I thought that it also applies to Kevin Stefanski a little bit here too, given the arguments that we've talked about, where he had said, to me, the annoying part of the Eberflus didn't have the talent to succeed is that it absolves him of the player acquisition process. We're acting like he didn't have any big say in bringing in Kenneth Murray, Sanborn, Kyer Elam, etc. He helped make his bed, and it backfired on him. What was the big story that we talked about all offseason was that it's the return to Kevin's offense. It's the return to Kevin's offense. It's Kevin's offense. We're going back. And again, it's not like he didn't have a say in who they draft. It's not like like Andrew Barry told him, shut up and sit in the corner. I'm taking Dylan Gabriel. Like, no, clearly that was somebody that they liked, and it's the reason why they brought him in. And so, again, it's one of those things where, like you said, in back-to-back seasons where you as the head coach are the architect of this offense, and you put together back-to-back negative 300 points below your 300 points below your expected points at
over a 2-year period, right?
Over 2 years.
We're talking about 56 touchdowns that could have been scored that weren't. Like it's a number that can't be, like, again, if we compare what like the second to last, right, Mac? If we're just comparing what the second to last is, the Browns are at minus 310 over 2 years. If we're just comparing what number 31 has been, we're talking about what, 119 plus, I think, 82? We're talking about 201. The Browns are not just in last place when it comes to expected points. They are over 110 points above what 31 has been the last 2 years. So it's not just that the offense was bad, and we're going to start talking about what we want to see going forward after this, but it's not just that the offense is bad. It's that it's been a historically bad offense. And I'm sorry, this is not a historically bad offensive roster. You can try to flip it however you want. This roster is just as bad offensively as a bunch of other rosters in the league, right?
And by the way, too, if you put, you said it's 56 touchdowns over 2 years. Literally, if you put Patrick Mahomes' best season, they still are missing 6 touchdowns.
Yeah. Like that's the level of missed opportunities there have been on offense when it comes to Kevin Stefanski over the last 2 years. And I'm sure if I go to 2023, it's not like a great expected point number either. That's what it's been. And that's why it couldn't continue. But now that we know what the problem is that they're trying to solve, right? Because I think it's very important for any head coaching hire, before you get into any of the garnish around it, you got to know why you're firing a coach and what you're hoping to replace, right? If you just fire somebody because you're bad, you don't know what the fuck you're trying to replace. And you're basically going in blind. We know why we're firing Kevin. It is the offensive performance over the last 2 years. It has not been good enough. And there was a tolerance for bad. It's been worse than bad, and I don't think he's gotten to some of his parts. Player development, they mentioned that, hasn't been what it needs to be. You touched on that as well. So when we're talking about what we want to see from a head coaching candidate, we don't have to name names, because I think that gets dangerous because people fall in love with names, and there's not really a lot of information to really have these strong opinions about names, right? Like the amount of people willing to crash out over Clint Kubiak is crazy to me, because we don't really know Clint Kubiak. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, he's just a name you've heard in relation to head coach. So I try to stay away from the name game of it. What paths do you think the Browns could take, or what traits do you want to see from the next guy to take this job?
Quote from Andrew Berry where he talked about the in-game management of that some things could have been handled better. I think that, you know, in terms of sequencing, I think that that can be affected as well. But I think that that's one thing where I don't necessarily, and this is just for me personally and kind of based on, you know, what they have mentioned as well. I think that they want somebody that can really kind of set the archetype for the archetypes up for the rest of the roster in terms of, all right, what are we looking for from the offensive side of the ball? I don't think that they need somebody to call plays on either side. I don't think that that's something that they're really looking for. I think they're looking for somebody that shows a lot of expertise and really shows, you know, as Jimmy mentioned and AB as well, their football acumen is something that jumps out to them. But I don't think that they need somebody who's going to be a play caller. Like, I think that we kind of saw the dangers of that the last few seasons where it became, well, okay, I need to call the plays. I need to call the plays until you don't. And so I think that this is something where I think they're going to be open to somebody basically being that CEO type, where it's just kind of managing how the game kind of flows through, kind of setting up, all right, what do we want to see from the offense? What do we want to see from these different position groups? And then let their coordinators build that out. And that's kind of where, you know, I almost look at it like, I say this and people are going to think of it in a different way. I look at Dan Campbell in that way, where Dan Campbell was not known as this massive play caller going in. He doesn't have to call the plays. What he does is he's the guy that basically is setting everything in place so that the rest of his coaching staff can coach. And I think that he's somebody that really excels in that. And I think that you saw it this year with Detroit when they had a lot of turnover when it came to the coaching staff, that kind of weakened a little bit. But I think that seeing how they take this coaching staff and really take that leader in, I think that they're looking for that first and foremost to kind of be that guy to kind of set the table for the rest of that offense and the rest of, you know, the team in general, I think, rather than taking somebody who, hey, you know what, this guy calls plays really well, let's bring him in. Like, I think that first and foremost, that leadership type, not to say that Kevin wasn't a good leader, because I do think that he was very personable. And obviously the players really related to him well. And I think that they really liked Kevin. But I do think that there could be a different way that you attack that in terms of the leadership style, in terms of, you know, even how you structure the week to week.
Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Well, I think Kevin got really good at structuring how to make sure the team's together, right?
Yes.
Because as good as the defense has been over the last 2 years and as bad as the offense has been, right? Like, if you look at expected points, the Browns defense is like plus whatever, right? But as good as that has been, it hasn't really become something where they're eating their own tail by the end of the season, or they're yelling at each other or doing that. I think that's what Kevin's best strength was that they didn't turn in on each other, and why so many people in the national media are so high on him. I do think, though, if you're the Browns, given where you're at, one of the main traits that I want them to be able to identify is whoever takes this job should be good at figuring out, goodness gracious, somebody's blowing me up, but should be good at figuring out, like they should have a track record of talent utilization there. Like,
Yes.
How well can I identify talent for their system and then develop that talent? I think that's the biggest thing that's lacked from Kevin Stefanski, which is that ability right there, right? Like, he did not have the ability to identify talent for his system and be able to fulfill roles that aren't really superstar roles, but just small roles. Like, how many times have they tried to find a wide receiver 3 or 4 in the draft and they've been unsuccessful with
Yeah.
it, right?
I mean, like we go back to, like the David Bell pick even a few years ago too. Like David Bell was the guy that Stefanski just kept holding on to and just refused to let go. Like between, him bringing in other different veterans along the way, it's felt like, and it's part of the reason why the offense has really stagnated. Even early on too, bringing in Austin Hooper and all of these other different like tight ends that you're trying to figure out how that shakes out and everything like that too. Like that's where I think the focus will tend to be, because despite what the narrative has been over the last few days, I do think that the coaching staff has more of a say in terms of who is on there, who they go after, and who they put on their roster, and who they target. I think is something that really needs to be discussed more. But I think that that's a situation where, again, Andrew Berry, to his credit, has done a solid job of, at least when it comes to having to make a pivot. I think that he does a good job of taking that lesson and applying it as he moves and shifts over into that next step that he tries to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more or less you need somebody who could provide good input when it comes to player development and figure out what needs to be done. And I think the stuff at wide receiver, the stubbornness to move off of wide receiver coach, even though some of this stuff wasn't like Chad O'Shea's fault, but it's like he's the guy that's there, right? Like, there was some of it where it's like Jerry Jeudy dropped the ball and people are mad at Chad O'Shea. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with Chad O'Shea, right? But like, there are things like, hey, Jamari Thrash, whatever the fuck happened with him, right? Donovan Peoples-Jones, what went wrong right there with Donovan Peoples-Jones? Like, why couldn't that work out better? There are wide receivers who've gotten here and gotten better. Amari Cooper had a career year, 2 career years here. Jerry Jeudy had a career year here. So it's not to say it's all been bad, but when we look at like the guys, like I think Cedric Tillman, we haven't really gotten what we've hoped out of Cedric. David Bell, whole career, didn't really get what we wanted to get out of David Bell, right?
Anthony Schwartz,
which I mean, Kevin tried, right? Kevin really tried with Anthony Schwartz. And then he finally got his guy in Isaiah Bond there. It's just been a constant flow of like, hey, we're bringing in options. We're not really satisfied with what the development is. To be fair to Kevin, I don't know how much he had to do with Harold Fainan's success this year. Felt like Harold was just kind of making a lot of his own there. But hey, look, Harold was good. Quinshawn was good. I think Deuce Staley has a lot to do with that. And who else was good on offense? Was that it? I could have sworn there was one more. Oh, Bond.
I mean,
Bond
I would
was
even
fine.
throw in Rocket Sanders and Dylan Sampson into that too. Like,
I think it's a little early for Rocket. But I thought that Dylan was solid in his limited opportunity there. I think also Bond had some issues where it's like, I do think there's some bad wide receiver coaching going on there. Cause like his eyes never got around properly. And I'm like, how does that happen? There's just there's a couple of things with Bond that bugged me, but the raw talent is certainly there. But when it comes to the long-term development of that, I think that's been the biggest failing for Kevin. Obviously, you want somebody who's going to be fresh schematically. Maybe that could be your coordinator, but I think you want your head coach to just in general, both sides of the ball, be somebody who, has that good eye for talent, right? I think that's, if you can obtain that, that's the biggest thing there that you need. Because right now, what the Browns need on offense is talent in the short term and the long term, because they're also going to be pretty expensive on the defensive side of the ball. So you're going to need to find somebody who can do a good job of identifying replacements and figuring out what they need. I think Kevin's biggest issue was he knew what he wanted to run. He had no clue of how to get the groceries for what he wanted, how to write a grocery list for what he wanted. So it ended up with a bunch of things that like did not make sense. But that's where we're at, right? I think that's the main thing. You want somebody who's not going to be the exact same thing as Kevin, but there are some things about Kevin that you do want to keep, right? The locker room, his ability to mend the locker room and keep those guys together over a rough season, I think is important. I think that's why you wouldn't want to go with a McDaniels or something like that. But I also think you want to just learn from what Kevin did wrong and did right and kind of lean more towards somebody who's good at identifying talent versus somebody you think is a genius, right? Because genius can dissipate real fast, right? That happened to Kevin. Was it genius in 2022? Was it genius in 2021? Was it genius in 2020? Not genius in 2023. Not genius in 2024. Definitely not genius in 2025. All of a sudden, it's over, right?
Yeah.
I know he used the term Andy Reid, right, about Kevin Stefanski. I don't think you need Andy Reid. I think you need somebody who can identify talent and fill those holes. So, and then you can hire a coordinator who can be the genius, who can have his 2 hot years, find another guy who can do what works with the offense and find that. So that's really where my focus is. I hope that whoever they bring in has that skill.
Yeah, and honestly, like I think that you brought it up too, but I almost think that that might be one of the more underappreciated skills of Sean McVay in LA is the fact that going in and identifying Kyron Williams as a option to bring in, or even one guy too that I know he's not going to get a ton of love, but Kanata Mumfield, wide receiver from Pitt last year, was a 7th round draft pick, but he was the guy that immediately McVay was like pounding the table. I have a role for him, and doesn't get a ton of playing time. As soon as Devontae Adams is out, all of a sudden that dude is in. He's getting catches for first downs. Understanding and knowing what he wants out of guys. Same thing. Identifying Puka in round 5.
It's less of being able to have like a magic eye, and I think I probably presented it improperly, and I'm just saying this for the audience. It's less of like, because some people might think, oh, I want the coach to basically be a scout. That's not what I'm saying. I want a coach to have a really good plan for like, okay, we're going to draft this guy. This is what he does well, and to be good at it. Like Kevin had plans for guys. Those plans just never fit the skill sets that the guys had, right? Yep. I think that was what was most lacking is like, okay, we had a plan for Cedric Tillman. It's 3 years later, we trade for Jerry Jeudy. Right. And there was a lot of that going on specifically on offense. You look at the defensive side of the ball, there's a plan for who's going to be opposite of Myles Garrett. It ends up being Isaiah McGuire, and then Alex Wright also pops up in there, gets a contract, boom, problem solved, right? Like, what's our plan at free safety? Oh, we'll develop this UDFA in Ronnie Hickman, see what we got in him. Boom, problem solved. Right? Linebacker. We'll develop, Devin Bush and all these other guys, but also we're going to draft Carson Switzer. Boom, problem solved. Right? The problems did not linger on the defensive side of the ball because what Jim Schwartz and that staff was really good at was being able to say, hey, we have this problem. We think he can fix it. We think he can do this role. We think he can play like this, and this is what we envision. They're right about that vision. That vision works out. Offensively, that process was not working the same, right? Yeah. Offensive line breaks down. Let's get Zach Center. He's going to help us get younger on the offensive line. Does not work out. Wide receiver, right? We need more depth at wide receiver. Okay, we're going to get David Bell. He should be an instant producer. That doesn't work out. That's been the failing on the offensive side of the ball is the inability to truly identify what's going to work in that system with what you have prospect-wise. Wow, defensively, it's not been an issue. That's what I think they want from a head coach hire. It's like, okay, we need somebody who has a better plan for that, has a good track record of that, or we think has the skills because of their experience to do something along those lines. But that's our desire for head coach. Anything else you want to add in there, Mac, before we head out?
No, I think we've touched. I think we've touched it all. I'm interested to see what road they go down in terms of who they bring in to interview, who they ultimately hire, what happens with the current staff. Because honestly, I think that despite the record and despite what we saw this year, there are a lot of very talented coaches on that staff that know what the hell they're doing, despite what fans might say. But I think that there's a lot of really talented people on that staff that I would love to see stick around. But again, it's where I'm interested to see what they do going forward and how they pivot away from Kevin Stefanski and into this next chapter of the Andrew Berry cycle, I guess we can call it now.
It's the dawn of a new era. But thank you, Mac, for joining us. You can check out Mac on 92.3 Fan. You can also check him out on Twitter. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.